let's talk about these Texans, man, because the expectations that are being put on this team right now, to me, are I don't want to say outrageous, but they're so high and they're so lofty and they're almost it's impossible to reach what people think. Like, we had a poll on the show the other day after they signed Stephon Diggs, 52% expectation Super Bowl.
Super Bowl?
Like, that's wild to me. Let's look at the hand of teams right now.
Yeah.
How many teams do you know are going to be good and arguably could be in the NFC or AFC Championship? I mean, I'm talking Ravens, Chiefs, Niners, but they have, like, their quarterback situation the last couple of years has always made it, like, a little murky, but they've always shown up, right?
Right.
So Niners, okay.
Maybe the Lions, maybe,
But maybe.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about no.
Yeah. Well, in terms of knowing, it's probably
3 teams.
Yeah, it's probably those 3 teams. But that's probably what gives Texas fans the confidence. It's like, well, every year somebody kind of new, right? So why can't it be us? That's probably what they're thinking. That's probably what Texas fans are thinking, especially when they added Stephon Diggs. You have Nico, you have Tank, you have Joe Mixon in the backfield, you got Dalton Schultz. So I can see why Texan fans see the offensive pieces and think Super Bowl. But to get to that, you need an entire collective team where there's like very little holes across the roster, very little questions. And we both know there are questions, especially on the defensive side.
And consistency. Like, it's
yeah,
not easy to be a team that's considered knowingly good. Like, hence there's only 2 or maybe 3 teams.
Right.
The Patriots were that for a minute.
Yep.
For the longest time we've seen in our generation lifetime, right? Like, we've never seen that before.
Right.
The Eagles were there for like a second, and then they fell off a little bit.
Right.
Other Cowboys are always in the conversation with just the media's national love for them. They're never really good.
Nah, they're never good enough to win the Super Bowl. No,
they're not even good enough to win a playoff game at times. They got waxed last year by the Packers, and maybe they're that next team.
Right.
So my concern is these expectations are out of pocket. You're playing a first-place schedule.
Yeah.
You have a second-year quarterback.
Yep.
You have a defense that doesn't have a second corner right now.
Right.
Like, there are questions to be had. So to say, 11, 12 wins, let's get it better, 11, 12 wins. Like, bro, no way. You take the under on that 1,000 out of 1,000 times.
Right.
And that's not to say they're not going to be good, because I think they will be good and they're going to be competitive. The X factor is C.J. Stroud, because he's that dude. And if you have that dude under center, you have a chance every game.
Yes, but we could look at the Chargers. They have that dude in Justin Herbert.
But they've had malfeasance at coaching. Like, they've had malpractice.
For sure. But that's what I'm saying. It comes like you need, and granted, we all believe in DeMeco, but you still need your roster. You still need a team to all be clicking on the same page to be able to win at the highest of highest levels, right? When we look at the Chiefs, yes, their offense wasn't great, but when it mattered, their offense was efficient enough and their defense was stout the entire year. And obviously in the playoffs, they held Miami to 7. Buffalo scored a little bit on them, but they held the Ravens, who were beating everybody's head in. They held them well under their averages. And
Shocked.
And then they held the Niners to 19 points in regulation. Like, the Niners, they had to kick the field goal. They had 22 points. But holding that team to only 19 points and basically, over time, whatever. And then they went down to score. It just showed that they had a great team on both sides of the ball. And that's what's really going to come down to for me, for if you want to compete at the highest of highest levels. Right now, in my eyes, the Texans have is a very nice, very good fantasy football team, right? You got Diggs, you got CJ, you got Mixon, you got Nico.
They have a fun-to-watch team.
Yeah, they got a very fun-to-watch team. But obviously on the defensive side, they still have some questions, right? D tackle, who's going to step up there? Cornerback, opposite side, Derek Stingley. We know Derek Stingley's a dog, but who's going to play on the opposite side of him? Who's going to emerge, right? Especially at the nickel spot. Yes, they brought back Desmond King, but they just drafted Kamari in the second round to compete at that spot, or maybe on the outside. And who's going to win at the cornerback? I mean, the nickel spot, outside. I mean, yes, you have Jeff Okudah, you have C.J. Henderson, 2 top 10 picks.
They've been on 3 teams for a reason, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I talked to a guy in the front office somewhere that knows CJ very, very well. It says coaches will love him. Players will love him in practice. He is one of the most fundamentally sound corners in the entire league.
Yeah.
Game shows up, he's nowhere to be found.
Right. Jeff Okudah, he got benched in Atlanta last year, so maybe DeMeco can possibly pull out the talent that made them top 10 picks, but that's still a question mark, right? Just how it can go one way, it can go the opposite way. That's not guaranteed. And obviously at the safety spot, you have Jimmy Ward, you have Jalen Petrie, and obviously both of them didn't play up to expectation last year, and they both would admit that. And Jimmy Ward obviously dealt with injuries. So how is Jalen going to bounce back from last year? And he was very candid when we spoke to him, saying that he has to let the game slow down a little bit. has to just do his job, do his assignment, and not trying to make every single play. Because that was an issue that he had last year, which is why, obviously, against the Cleveland Browns, he got benched because I think when they gave it a 75-yard touchdown, that played a part of him being benched, right? So that's a question mark. Obviously, the D tackle room, there's questions there, right? Like, you lost Sheldon, traded away Malik, thinking you were going to get Armstead, but you didn't get Armstead. And right, DeMeco Ryans can't play on the inside, but you have Foley, who the Jets didn't want to re-sign him for a reason.
I hate the mix and match game, smoke and mirrors at that position. I hate it
because
you either get blown off the ball or you create push. One way or the other, it's a man versus man game. You got to win your battle.
And from whenever I talk to people on the Texans or the coaching staff or whatever, they'll say the reason why Jonathan Gennard and Will Anderson were able to have a lot of success and get sacks last year was because Malik and Sheldon were consistently collapsing the pocket from the interior, which didn't give quarterbacks much room to step up when the pressure from JG or Will was coming around the edge. So if you're gonna not replicate that, now maybe Will doesn't take that next leap in terms of a sack total, and maybe Danielle Hunter, who had 16.5 sacks last year, maybe doesn't come close enough to that because you don't have. If again, they could be amazing, but they could go the opposite way, just I said about the cornerback spot. So that's kind of where I'm at, man. That's kind of where I'm at. They have some questions, and if you want to compete in the AFC with those offenses, you're going to have to be able to slow them down. Because think about it like this. I was thinking about it on the way.
You got to have defense.
To.
It's an age-old phrase, defense wins championships, and I actually don't believe it.
Right.
Good football teams win championships. Like you mentioned the Chiefs.
Yeah.
They were not an offensively good football team last year, despite what everyone might think as a casual fan because of Patrick Mahomes, right?
Right.
Well, that defense was elite, and then Patrick Mahomes was Patrick Mahomes when it mattered most.
Exactly, and Travis Kelce turned the clock back in the playoffs.
Yeah. Like he wasn't very good all year.
Yeah, and then in playoffs he looked like Travis Kelce. So like
that's what happens when your girl shows up. You want to show out.
It's
like when you play pickup ball in high school. Like, just went a little bit harder in the gym, a little bit extra.
Yeah, man, you know how that goes.
A little bit more physical.
So I was thinking about it on the way here. The reason why I want to harp on the defense is because imagine if hypothetically wild card round, let's say they win a division. Let's say hypothetically they win a division, and then you have the Bengals coming into town. Then let's say you have to go to Buffalo. Then you got to go to Arrowhead. You think you're going to be able to win all three of those games via shootouts? No way, no how. You're not winning all those games via shootouts. That's just too much to put on CJ.
How many teams win via shootout consistently anyway?
Yeah, no, you're right.
Like even the best, when the Chiefs were at their best, they still had to have a defensive stop at a given point. And you always have the best quarterbacks in the league in the playoffs when it matters most. So you're always going to need – like when the Patriots lost with Tom Brady when they were undefeated, they lost because the Giants were not very good offensively. They made big plays, of course. But the pressure that they got consistently, it was the defense that destroyed everything. And when when the Chiefs lost to the Buccaneers, because that defense ripped that offense to shreds.
Right. And then one of Tom Brady's losses in the Super Bowl, when he threw for over 500 yards, the defense could have stopped a nosebleed against Nick Foles. So
that was the Malcolm Butler game,
right? Right. When Bill benched him and won't tell anybody why.
Feel free to come on, Kickin' With Kunkel and explain that.
So again, like if you want to win at the highest of highest levels, both sides have to be clicking, right? Because when we saw when the Texans played the Ravens that first half in the playoff game, they were competitive, and in the second half, the defense didn't show up and the offense couldn't move the ball. If let's say hypothetically the defense showed up in the second half and they kept it close, maybe eventually like the offense figures something out. Because eventually, like when you get that many cracks at it, eventually you figure something out. It takes a team to be able to win deep in the playoffs.
Schedule. Like, listen, first of all, it's a very tough schedule. Fourth toughest.
Yeah, very tough.
And I don't care when you play. I don't care that that's stretch whenever it is around Christmas. Or against the Dolphins, Ravens, Chiefs.
Dolphins, Chiefs, Ravens.
So I don't care that they're all good teams. You got to play them at some point. I don't care.
Right.
I think it's just rude you making a team play 3 NFL games in 11 days. Player safety, my ass. No. These guys already don't like the Thursday games because they get hurt, not because they have to play football or something crazy. And I understand the fans are like, we get paid, that's what you do. But they can't go out there and play football at a high level and then do it 3 days later. Like that's insane. And that's the biggest concern for me is if they falter there or if they have a major injury there, that just ruins the season.
No, exactly. Again, I think it's all because you're right. It doesn't matter who they're playing. If you're playing 3 teams, in 10 days, 11 days.
And there's no cupcakes in the NFL.
Right.
Well, irrelevant.
Exactly. So I think what helps them a little bit, just a little bit, I'm tapping into my third eye. They do play the Dolphins and Chiefs, I believe, at noonish/1ish, So, like, if let's say one of those was a night game, that'd be even worse. So at least they can get that game out the way, have the rest of that Sunday or Saturday to recover and get ready for that following game. But I think that Ravens game, thank God, is at home. At least for them, they have 2 of those 3 at home, right? And I don't think Kansas City is that far of a trip to go to for the Texans. But that's still tough. And again, as you mentioned, still have to play 3 games in 11 days.
I mean, it's just irresponsible to me.
Yeah.
I think
the NFL's being greedy.
You can't do that. Yeah, and I think the NFL, in a different conversation, is teetering on the line of too much.
Yeah,
like just over-saturating the market with football.
Yeah.
Let's talk Tank Dell.
Yeah,
good to see him out there.
Yeah, absolutely. He looked the same.
Yeah. Situation that he ran into in Florida. What do you hope he takes away from this? And I'll tell you what my view is and how I'm thinking about this.
Mm-hmm.
That it's time to grow up. And not from an immaturity standpoint, because I don't think he really did anything wrong.
No, he didn't.
Bad place, bad time.
Right.
Here it is, though. And this is reality, whether you like it or not. Like, dude, you're a multimillionaire now.
Yeah.
It's time to not be in those spots.
Yeah.
Because you got to hang out with different people that have things to lose. Like, you have everything to lose.
Right.
You got to start hanging out with people that have things to lose.
Yeah.
Because people act differently when they have things to lose. You and I don't act the same way we did when we were in college. Because
That's
now
true.
it's like,
You
I
got things to
can't be
lose.
seen doing that. If this does happen and this gets out,
Yeah.
then I lose this X, Y, Z.
Right.
You got a family, you got kids, all the whole 9 yards. You hang out with a bunch of your single buddies that are young, don't have a whole lot of money and anything to lose.
Right.
Like, they're going to be doing dumb things when they drink.
Right. No, it's a good point. I mean, I remember seeing a clip on Shannon Sharp and Chad Ochocinco's podcast, and Chad mentioned that he texted to Tank Dell and said, I'm glad that you're all right. Got to move a little bit different, baby. That's what he said, quote unquote. That's what he said. He texted Tank Dell, and I think Tank understands that. And I think that in terms of the lesson that he could, quote unquote, learn from it is that. Right, move a little bit different.
Life's different now, man. And God bless him for it. I think he's a really good kid.
Yeah.
I don't think he was doing anything stupid.
Nah, me either.
He just made Listen, we've all been in a silly spot that hasn't resulted in that. Thank God.
Right.
But it's just like, hey, not never again in that position.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So I'm glad that Tank was safe, and obviously he was, as we said, wasn't doing anything wrong, right? Like, he was just, as you said, an unsafe spot at a wrong time. It could have been anybody. But as you said, hopefully, he's able to, that doesn't happen to him again. Because, again, hell of a ball player, he can make a lot of money in this. Because his skill set can last up until his mid-30s, right? Like, he can have a long, lengthy career because his game isn't built on physicality. His game is built on speed, agility, quickness. That type of his game, even though he's 5'8", 170, his game can last until his 30s, right?
You know who he reminds me of? And he's got a long way to get there. Marvin Harrison.
Oh, okay.
Marvin Harrison, Senior. Get down, be smart.
Right. I see what you're saying.
Quick,
fast.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying.
Similar size.
Yeah.
Never took hits.
Right. Yeah.
Really smart.
I like. And another name I could think of. I know this is, again, long way to go.
Yeah.
But Antonio Brown also, right? Like, they obviously
just stop at a certain point. Don't follow everything.
Yeah, for sure. But
keep your
game-wise,
jersey on.
I was actually covering that game.
Whoa. So, all right, hold on. Stop. All right, so you're in the press box at
I was in the press box.
What are you doing?
So I'm covering the game, and I remember I'm sitting next to Kaz Costello, the New York Post guy, and we're just like focused because the Buccaneers were driving. And then, like, my mentor, Bob Galber, he comes over to me, and he comes up to me. He's like, Antonio Brown just walked off the field. I'm like, what? And I go on Twitter, and I'm seeing the videos and whatnot, and I'm like, oh, this is something. This is crazy. But, like, he was already gone by that point, by the time we noticed, because we were so zeroed in because
there's a lot going on.
There was a lot. And, like, they were in the midst of, like, Zach Wilson was in the midst of playing, I know, it's crazy to say, the best game of his career. And it's still the best game of his career.
High bar.
Yeah. He was in the midst of playing his best game of his career, so
was that not against the Texans?
No. I would say the game against the Buccaneers was better because he was ripping it. He was ripping it. He was going toe-to-toe with Tom Brady, even though Tom Brady pulled it out at the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like that game was crazy, and like it just reminded me because it's like people always say when I got on the beat, anything could happen when you're on the Jets beat, and that game signified that to the fullest.
And being on a New York beat, even if there's nothing happening, you can make it happen.
Exactly, So
you nervous about Stephon Diggs not showing up to OTAs?
Nah, he's a veteran. Like a lot of veterans don't show up. Like Daniel Hunter didn't show up. Laramie's probably an Alabama trainer or something.
Like I think he's earned his stripes. I don't care about anybody showing up to OTA volunteers or not because right now it's the biggest thing going, right? So right now we're like, oh my gosh, he's not here. Training camp rolls around. It's like everybody's here. Like, what's the problem? What happened 3 months ago? Like no one even remembers. It's not a big deal to me.
It's just a storyline for the now because we got to keep the storyline going. We got to talk about something, right?
I would love to see him here only because Nico was there, Tank was there, CJ was there. He's new to the team. He doesn't know anybody. Like
Joe Mixon was there.
More familiarity with CJ, the better.
Yeah,
would have loved to see him there.
Yeah.
Not going to stress about it.
No need to stress about it at all. I mean,
like Twitter obviously freaking.
You know how it goes, and then people writing things about it and things of that nature. But I mean, he'll be there. He'll for sure be at mandatory minicamp.
Oh, he better be.
Yeah. Or
then we got real things.
Then we got an
about.
Actual story, but he'll be there. Like I highly doubt he won't be there. He's happy to be obviously with the Texans. Obviously him. Tank and CJ, they had already, you saw in LA, they were throwing together and whatnot with Metchie. So it's not like
he's been around.
Yeah, he's been around. And we asked DeMeco about it, and DeMeco said like it's been a joy to work with Stephon Diggs and things of that nature. So he's been around the offseason program.
Okay, so you mentioned corner.
Yeah.
Should they have signed Steven Nelson?
Back?
Yeah. Yes or no?
Should they? I think
not at this point.
Yeah, not at this point. But I think in the beginning of free agency, the way it played out, they probably would have been better off keeping him. For sure, because while he kind of wore down a little bit at the end, and he gave us some big plays, he also made big plays, right? Like he basically sealed shut that Browns game. He was
good.
Yeah, he was good. Like
he was a good CB2.
Yes, like he was really good. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So like if they still had him, we're not thinking, oh man, what they gonna do at cornerback? But he kind of burned that bridge now. Why
is he calling DeMeco Milk Dud?
Well. Hey man, Steve go walk to the tune of his own drum. I'll give this to Steve. The reason why I respect him is because you're always gonna know where he stands with you, right? He's not gonna sugarcoat. He's not gonna like smile in your face and then be like, nah. You're gonna know how he feels based off of his energy and things of that nature. Obviously, clearly, him and DeMeco probably didn't see eye to eye towards the end. It is what it is. Not everybody's gonna. Love the coach.
I've never heard anyone criticize DeMeco, though. And that's not to say there isn't anything to be criticized. The guys in the locker room know more than we do.
Right. I would say that players for sure respect DeMeco.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily they agree with everything DeMeco does. You know what I'm saying? There are things that like.
What was the biggest thing in that locker room that you think that caused consternation?
I don't necessarily think like it caused any friction because they have CJ.
Mm-hmm.
So like CJ's bought in and CJ's slinging it. So everybody's always going to buy in because it's like if the quarterback's bought in, then all right, I'm going to be bought in. But, he works them hard. Like that, he grinds them, which is why we saw all the soft tissue injuries. But he legitimately grinds them. So maybe that, like, sometimes he can grind them a little bit too much. But it worked out in the end because at the end of the season, they're playing their best ball. You know what I'm saying? So I guess maybe you could parse that. But
how much is that like players just don't have to be treated that way? And I don't mean treated that way. Don't have to work hard in practice because of CBA agreements. They've been around. They're millionaires.
Yeah.
Versus like, hey, man, if DeMeco loves you and DeMeco wants the best for you and the team, at some point you got to acquiesce and get coached, right?
Yeah. But I do think they appreciate the coaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
They appreciate the coaching for sure. It's just like, again, like sometimes – the very, very, very hard practices can, beat the body up a little bit. But
they're not going to be happening in the back end of the season this year. They better not be.
Yeah, you're right about that.
I'm going to lean into and backtrack a little bit on the expectations are crazy, and they are.
Yeah.
With that being said, is this the best Texans team we've ever seen coming into a season expectation-wise? It's just crazy.
So I would say it's right there with. Probably it's probably gotta be one of the Deshaun teams, maybe like the 19 team that won a playoff game.
Was that the year they lost to the Colts?
No, that's the year. The 19 team is the year they lost to the Chiefs. Maybe that team. That's probably the team that comes the closest because they both teams have star quarterbacks. Both teams had star receivers. Obviously, I think this O-line is better. But the other one had J.J. Watt. They didn't have a cornerback as good as their thing, but they had a very solid unit across the board. So I would say, like, the 19 team and this team, they're neck and neck. They're for sure neck and neck. Because the 19 team, they were up 24-0 on the Chiefs, who ended
That's
up
what I
winning the
mean,
Super Bowl.
yeah.
So, like, I can't – granted, they all fell apart, but I can't poo-poo them. Between the 19 team and this team, they're for sure the two best teams in team history, hands down. We just got to see what this team does because if this team doesn't make the playoffs or this team goes out in the first round, then that's kind of that.
I'm worried about the offensive line.
Really?
Yeah. Like, can they run the ball? They were so not physical last year. That worries me because they have to be two-dimensional this year. They can't lean a CJ as much as they did last year. And I think they're going to. I think they're going to be a throw-first team, three wide receivers that want the ball, maybe have 3 1,000-yard guys,
right?
Which would be wild. And I think they can be good, but it makes me nervous that if they line up on 4th and 1, can they get that one?
That's a good question.
If the whole building knows, they've got to run it.
That's a good question. I would say they should be better because I remember Miami. Because there's a lot of similarities between Miami and the Texans to an extent. There's some similarities. But from a scheme standpoint, offensively, Mike McDaniels, his first year in Miami, they couldn't run the ball at all either. Mm-hmm. They really struggled running the ball. I believe
but they ran like super well east to west, quickly misdirection.
In 2023,
no?
Yes.
Okay.
2022,
okay.
No. They were the bottom third team in terms of running the football. They had to rely on Tyreek, Tua, Mike Gesicki, Waddle to carry the load in terms of throwing the football. But then we saw last year they were a top 5 rushing attack. So I think that Bobby Slowick being from that tree, knowing just the small intricacies, because we saw like. There were moments where you could see the run game clicking, and then whether it be injuries or whether it be they're just not being physical enough, and everybody being on the same page, you saw kind of regress a little bit. But I think that because again, it's mainly the same offensive line. Everybody having an entire year under their belt, knowing exactly what Bobby wants in terms of being able to execute the wide zone system. I believe that the running game should be much better, especially have Joe Mixon back there too, right? And again, you can't.
I think that might be the biggest addition
right,
to the offseason.
Exactly, it could be. I just have to see what happens in terms of the because he's at that age where the running backs turn to decline a little bit. He's at that age, but DeMeco said at the owners' meeting he doesn't expect any drop off, so we'll see in that regard.
I mean,
and again, like
he better say that.
Yeah, right. And he is a multi-dynamic back out the backfield and. Obviously, he's a really good running back, so I don't think he's going to fall off. But, again, I do agree with you that he could be the biggest acquisition when we look back at everything from the offensive standpoint. So I think when you mesh all of that together, the running game should be much better this year, and it could be more balanced. Because, again, if you're balanced, that makes you really, really hard to beat. I've had a defensive coordinator tell me before, if I know that you have to throw the ball all the time, I'll eventually figure you out.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can be balanced and you don't know if they're going to run it or throw it, now you might have people playing half a step slower than they would if they know you're going to throw it.
What's C.J. Stroud's ceiling?
Ceiling?
Yeah.
In 2023 or 2024 or just overall?
Do you think he's a Hall of Fame type of quarterback?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I remember like after the third preseason game, I remember going on my radio show with Paul at ESPN 975, and I remember saying like, hey, CJ Friend's our quarterback. He has the goods. He's just going to come down to can he process quick enough to be an effective quarterback, but he has everything it takes. So I think when you have the type of season he had, because again, he led the league in touchdown interception ratio and passing yards per game. The only 2 quarterbacks in NFL history to ever do that. Joe Montana, Tom Brady. That's it. That's the list. CJ Stroud, Tom Brady, Joe Montana. That is the list. Those are the 2 guys. How many rings they got between the 2 of them? I think that's 11. So again, like, yeah, like, and he's in that class, I don't want to say he would have, but if he would have played, let's say he doesn't get hurt against the Jets, obviously he might have thrown for almost 5,000. He might have thrown for 5,000 yards. Honestly, because he was at 41.08. So, and he played 15 games. So basically, if he would have had 2 more, let's say he'd have played the Titans game and the Browns game. We saw what he did against the Browns in the playoff game.
Yeah.
Had 270 in the first
Absolute
half.
Stud.
So like he might have got 5,000 as a rookie.
All right, bro. We appreciate you coming on Kickin' It With Kunkel.
Brother.
You can find Kickin' It With Kunkel on Fox Local right now. Comes out every Friday. My Jays are better.
My Jays are better.
Peace.